Hi guys, I'm going to try something new. So I have this book and I've been dying to read it. I've had it for, honestly, I'm going to say like 10 years. And it's called True Canadian Ghost Stories by John Robert Columbo. I forgot I had it and actually bought myself a second copy. I'm not even kidding. So I'm thinking, you know what? Every night I like to read a little bit before I go to bed. Whether it be a good ghost story, anything, true crime, whatever. So, you know what? I'm just going to share it with you guys because I know a lot of you like paranormal and not a lot of people know about Canadian ghost stories. So I figured, you know what? Why not? Okay, so this one is titled I Never Felt Comfortable Alone There. And this was written by Gloria Dove Kavanaugh. Gloria Dove is the professional name of Gloria Dove Kavanaugh, a musician and singer of country, western, bluegrass, and gospel songs. She lives in the picturesque town of Elora, Ontario. That's close to me. It's just so cool reading about stuff in your area, right? I sent her a letter of inquiry when I learned from the photographer Jack Cohan, who was photographing haunted houses in nearby Fergus for my book, Mysteries of Ontario, that Gloria was known to have had some strange experiences in her house in Elora. She replied on September 14th, 1998. I wrote back and encouraged her to write an account of her experiences, and this she did on September 29th, 1998. I keyboarded this and wrote to her again, and she replied on November 20th, 1998. Here, finally, is her account of her experiences in different houses in Fergus and Elora. Gloria Dove's latest CD is called Traveler of the Night. So here's what she wrote. In July 1980, my husband Bill and I purchased the house at 195 Baker Street in Fergus, Ontario. It was built around 1826. At the time, our two children were young, 8 years old and 6 years old. The large stone house was old, and we started to renovate it that August. We ran into difficulty renovating the upstairs and ended up tearing most of the downstairs apart, as the joists had to be replaced to strengthen the floors so we could do work on the upstairs. In January of 1981, I was wakened up by coughing in the attic. I thought I was dreaming and went back to sleep. In the morning, I got up and went downstairs, and sound of coughing never crossed my mind until my daughter came down and said, "Did anyone hear coughing in the attic last night?" I didn't want to believe what I was hearing, but I told her that I had heard it. She wanted to know who was causing it. I just told her I didn't know. Bill suggested we move the beds downstairs so we would not hear the coughing sounds again. We did that and raised a curtain between our bed and the children's. A few nights later, I was awakened by the sound of boots walking in the house and the sense that someone was standing by the curtain staring at us. I was so frightened I could not move to wake Bill. Finally, he stirred and I managed to tell him someone was in our house. We got up and looked around, but no one was there. We went back to sleep the next morning when Bill and I talked about what had happened that night. My daughter told us of her experience. She said that when she saw the man, he was already inside the house. He was standing in the back room and staring into the main part of the house. He was pointing a rifle ahead of him and not aiming at her. She could see his hat on his head sideways. She said that he had come there every night since we had moved downstairs. We started to tell some neighbors what was happening, but they thought we were completely ridiculous, so we quit telling them and kept our experiences to ourselves. We moved the children's beds back upstairs, but kept our downstairs near the back entrance to the house. Again, we raised a curtain, but this time along one side of the bed. That night, I heard the sound of boots walking on the floor. They sounded to me like big army boots, if I had no idea where the sound came from. The fan in our wood stove stopped of its own accord. A chair began rocking. This time I woke up Bill, and we got out of bed. The fan on the stove came on again. The chair quit rocking, and we heard the sound of someone running in army boots, fleeing the house. All this happened at the same time. The next morning I got up and checked all the doors. The fan seemed to be working order. We didn't have a rocking chair, and none of our chairs had even uneven legs. There was a chair near the stove, but it was not a rocking chair. It was time to find someone to help us. I called the lady in Fergus who had lived a few doors away back in the 1970s. Her name was Pat Mestern, and I knew she had something in her house sometimes, and I asked her if she could tell me what to do as we were really upset. We told her everything that had happened. everything had taken place over the last 2 weeks. She said to leave it to her for a few days and she would get back to us. She said I should talk to it with my mind and ask what it wanted. The next thing I knew, a night or two later, it was in the house again, shutting the stove fan off, rocking in a chair, and walking around the house in boots. So I asked it what it wanted. All that I could hear faintly was, "You." I poked my husband to get up. It's in the house again, and I hollered at it to get out now because it was in the house. Everything happened the same as before. The fan came on, the chair quit rocking, and the boots whooshed by. My husband went to the door and opened it, and our cat raced out, meowing as if it was following someone. We could actually feel its presence at times. I phoned Pat again and told her what had happened. She said that we could have someone like a psychic come over to her house, but she added that she had found out something very interesting and said that we really didn't need to be afraid of it. She had contacted the previous owners of our house and learned that the grandfather had served in the Boer War. He had come home from South Africa in the wintertime, and he liked to sit by the stove and rock in his rocking chair. He had died in the house. She believed that he didn't like the house being disturbed with renovations. She believed that when we completed our renovations, the disturbances would stop. The presence played tricks on us. Quite a few times we had to get up in the night and turn the television off because it would turn the set on full blast. One particular night, Bill called to me to tell me to turn the hall light off, so I did. Partway down the stairs, Bill asked, "I thought I asked you to turn the light off light off in the hall." I told him that I had, but it was still on. I would turn it off again. Before I got to the stairs, the light was on again. I hollered at my son to turn the light off. He did, and before my eyes, it jumped right back on again. So I finally said, "You want the light on? We'll leave it on." The next morning, Bill switched it off, and it stayed off. We checked the switch and the socket, but there was nothing wrong with them. Sometimes Bill and our daughter would hear people eating and laughing in the old part of the house. He would holler at them to knock it off, and it would be quiet. This happened many times with him and a few times with my daughter. The years 1987, 88, and 89 were quiet ones. The house had been renovated by now, and there wasn't much of the way of the presence. In all, we owned the house from 1980 to 1989. I never felt comfortable alone there. Bill and I separated in January 1989, and I left the house for good. Bill passed away in January 1997. Dan, my common-law husband, and I moved into this very old home at 16 McNabb Street in Elora on October 1st, 1997. Within a few days of moving in, I sensed something was odd. I was upstairs at the time and thought someone was watching me from the backyard of the house. I looked, but nothing was amiss. I let it go at that and went about my business. But every now and again, it felt like something was there. One morning at the end of November 1st, I was awakened by a very gentle knocking on the bedroom door. I thought I was dreaming and dismissed it. The next morning, I was awakened by the knocking again. This time I wasn't dreaming. The third time it happened, I knew I had a problem. About 4 days passed, and I was in the bathroom in the early evening when I heard what sounded like a pile of books falling over. I ran to the back room, but there was nothing there. There were no books there to fall over. 4 or 5 days passed, and Dan went away on a trip. I decided to vacuum them upstairs, starting with the bedroom. I took the vacuum cleaner upstairs, and set it up in the bedroom. Then I decided I would vacuum the room the next day, after I had sprinkled the rug with carpet cleaner. I had a package of Cal brand baking soda on a shelf behind the door. I had used it on the carpet a few times because the cat that belonged to the previous owners had left its smell in the room. I decided I would use the baking soda the next day to deodorize the room and then vacuum it. The first night alone in the house, I was too nervous to sleep upstairs, so I slept on the couch downstairs. The next morning, I got up and went upstairs to get dressed. I opened the bedroom door, and there was the Cal brand baking soda spilled all over the carpet. The box was sitting on the bed, not on the shelf behind the door. I was so shocked I couldn't even use the phone in the house. I went across the road to use the neighbor's telephone. I called Pat Messern, the lady in Fergus, the one I had called years before. I told her what had happened. I thought perhaps the presence from the other house had followed me after all these years. Pat asked, "Does it feel the same?" I said that it didn't. She asked me what I sensed it was. I said, "It seemed to me it's a child." She said, "Go home and just say that you don't have time to vacuum, but you'll clean it up this time."